Who are Americans still detained in Russian prisons? Here's the list. After an extensive prisoner swap that brought home Americans, including Paul Whelan, Ivan Gershkovich and Alsu Kurmasheva, there are still more Americans being held in Russian prisons. The swap executed on Thursday saw 16 people released from Russian prisons, including the 3 Americans, while 8 Russians were released from custody in the U.S., Germany, Norway, Slovenia, and Poland. In addition to the 3 U.S. citizens, Vladimir Kara-Murza, a green card holder, was also freed. The return of the Americans, who arrived back on U.S. soil late Thursday night, was widely celebrated, as family members greeted family members that in some cases hadn't been seen for months or years, but other families said they're still waiting for good news about their loved ones being held in Russia. One such family is that of Marc Fogel, a teacher who was arrested in a Moscow airport in 2021 and sentenced to 14 years in prison for carrying a small amount of medical marijuana. Fogel's family said they are completely heartbroken and outraged that he wasn't included in the swap, in a statement shared with U.s.a. Today. Who are the Americans still detained in Russia? Here's what to know. Fogel, in his early 60s, is a history teacher from Pennsylvania who taught at an Anglo-American school in Moscow for nearly a decade. In 2021, Fogel was detained at the airport and charged with possession of cannabis, illegal in Russia. His family has said he was prescribed the marijuana to treat chronic back pain. Though his case has drawn similarities to Brittany Griner's case, she was released as part of a smaller prisoner swap in December 2022. Fogel has never been labeled as wrongfully detained by the U.S. government, frustrating his family and a group of bipartisan lawmakers. Marc is not rich, a celebrity, or connected to powerful patrons. All he has is his family, led by his 95-year-old mother, Malphine, who is fighting for her son's rights. This fight has been met not with support and understanding, but with stonewalling, double standards, and today, abandoning Marc to die in prison for less than an ounce of medical marijuana prescribed to manage his severe decades-long spinal disease, the statement from Fogel's family said. Staff Sergeant Gordon Black, an active-duty U.S. soldier, was detained in Russia earlier this year on theft charges. The U.S. Army said he made an unauthorized trip to Russia from South Korea, where he had been stationed. Russian officials said he traveled there to meet a Russian woman he met in South Korea. Black, 34 at the time of his arrest, was being out-processed to Texas when, instead of boarding his flight to the U.S., he went through China to Vladivostok, Russia, for personal reasons, Army spokesperson Cynthia Smith said in May. U.S. authorities said there was no evidence it was Black's intention to stay in Russia. According to his charges, a 32-year-old woman made a police report that Black had stolen 10,000 rubles, or $113, from her. He was sentenced to 3 years and 9 months in a Russian prison. A former Marine, Robert Gilman, was arrested and sentenced to 4.5 years in prison, later reduced to 3.5 years, for assaulting a police officer while drunk. A new trial began earlier this summer, according to a Russian state news agency. Gilman has said he doesn't remember the assault and that he has apologized to Russia and the police officer. His initial sentence was handed down in October 2022. Semya Karolina, a dual U.S. and Russian citizen, was detained and accused of treason in February while she was visiting family. The 32-year-old Los Angeles resident could face up to 20 years in prison if convicted in a trial that is set to begin next week. Russia's Federal Security Service accused her of collecting funds for the Ukrainian army. Her family said she donated $51.80 to a charity raising money for humanitarian aid for Ukrainians impacted by the war. I'm happy for the people, the Americans, who have returned to their families, Carolina's boyfriend, Christopher Van Heerden, told Reuters.